My coworker went ballistic after professing his love for me because he didn't know I had a boyfriend. 8 years ago I, 19F, worked with Kyle. 30M. 10 months after I started he gave me a note saying he was interested in me and gave me his number to use if I was interested in him. I wasn't interested and therefore didn't use his number. Shortly after, I started to date someone else. A year later, he cornered me in the back of the store and professed his love for me. When I told him I had a boyfriend, he exploded. I was very scared but luckily it didn't turn physical. I still think of this from time to time, and upon reflection I have decided that clear and concise communication when I received the note was the only thing that could have potentially prevented this whole thing from happening. Hi all, this is a situation that happened about 8 years ago. I am 27F now, but was only 19 at the time. Sorry in advance. This post is a bit long. For some context, around 10 years ago I got a part-time job working at a decent size retail chain in my area. Think similar to a Dollar General but not. I had just barely turned 18 and I was on winter break from college when I was hired. In the beginning, I was solely on the registers since the store was always packed with it being so close to Christmas. Eventually, they let me branch out and try my hand at restocking shelves, which suited me much better. I'm a bit introverted and enjoy not having to talk to multitudes of people for hours on end. I can do it when I have to, but much prefer not to. One day, they put me in one particular area with Kyle, the department head. Kyle was well liked by all the other employees at the store, and although I only had limited interactions with him before, he seemed pretty nice. I helped him tidy up and restock his area, and since I am very spatially correct and particular, Kyle really liked how his area turned out looking, and told me so. He must have requested my help from here on out, because I almost exclusively got assigned to his area when I wasn't needed on the register. Over time, I got to know him a bit better and I really liked him as a friend. He reminded me a lot of my high school best friend. He seemed a bit immature for his age, late 20s early 30s, but that didn't bother me. He had a good self-deprecating and sarcastic sense of humor, just like me. We got along very well and joked a lot throughout our shifts. I will also mention that at this point in my life, I had never had a romantic relationship. I was much more focused on my studies. I also was never good at catching on when someone liked me. I usually had to be told by one of my friends that I was missing the cues. I just never really thought that anyone would really like me like that. Low self-esteem issues, but it is what it is, and never took anything I noticed seriously and assumed people would say things as a joke or a prank to pick on me, and had learned to leave it be and let it roll off my back. I also am a pretty private person. Even if I know someone pretty well, I don't usually share anything too personal. Too many times of being vulnerable and having it used against me taught me not to share my personal life with people outside of my family and very close friends. So come October, about 10 months after I started, a lot of my work life has been spent working with Kyle. We have a pretty good system worked out and we work really well together. One day he is leaving his shift around my break time. He had a day shift and I had an evening shift that overlapped his. As I'm going upstairs to the break room, he is going downstairs and gives me a piece of paper and says not to look at it until after he's gone. Not thinking too much about it, I put it in my locker and left it there until my shift was done. Now I'm leaving work and I remember I have this note. I take it to my car and read it and it says I really like you and if you want to meet outside of work here's my number. I am frozen in place. I never thought that he liked me like that. I didn't have to work for a few days, so I knew I had some time to think this over a bit before I have to see him. At this point I was working my summer-fall seasonal job also. I had been working there since I was 16, and I really liked someone there I was working with. I'll call him Evan. I had to really sort out my feelings and decide what to do. Eventually I decided that it wouldn't be fair to Kyle to let him on if I actually liked someone else. I had no idea if me and Evan could or would ever be anything, but I realized I didn't really think of Kyle in any romantic way, just as a friend, and didn't want him to waste his time on me if I wasn't going to be 100% committed. That isn't fair to him. So, I, being the awkward introvert that I am, decide to just ignore the note. But I also realize that I have to check my behavior with Kyle so that he doesn't get his wires crossed and think that he sees something from me that isn't there. Things were a little awkward at work for a bit, but about a month later me and Kyle are back at it like nothing ever happened, and I assumed he got the hint. I didn't even put his number in my phone. I threw the note away. I figured the silence would be all he needed. Boy was I wrong. Anyways, now come the end of November, Evan asks me out, and I am elated. Within a few weeks he and I are exclusive BF and GF. And spoiler alert, we are happily married with 2 kids now. Now, I don't have Facebook or Instagram or anything like that. There is no way anyone would know anything about my personal life unless I or someone else specifically told them. So, I am still working with Kyle. Things are great. Back to our old joking selves. It's about a year after Kyle wrote me the note. Another evening shift that I am working with Kyle and we are back by the cardboard baler in the employee only area. crushing all the empty boxes we cleaned out of his area per usual. We are about 5 minutes from close, and he and I and the front end supervisor are the only employees in the building. I never saw it coming. Out of the blue, Kyle professed his love for me. He said he couldn't hold it in and pretend any longer. He really liked me and wanted to go out on a date. He said he didn't know why I teased and flirted with him for so long and never texted him my number. Said that I was hurting him by ignoring his feelings. I am just frozen in place, not moving. I can't even find words at that moment. I am so confused. I thought we were past this. I specifically was making sure I wasn't leading him on or flirting in any manner. I made the decision a year ago to be very specific with making sure I wouldn't do that. He gave me no indication that he still felt that way, and I thought he'd have moved on by now. I am just staring at him at this point, wondering what the heck to say to him. He stares back and says, "Well, do you have anything to say to me?" I manage to say, I have a boyfriend." He immediately starts to apologize. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I never would have asked if I had known." This goes on for a minute. Then he becomes enraged and starts blaming me for this situation. I'm assuming he was just hurt and lashing out, but it really started to worry me. I was alone with him back there and he was starting to scare me. Now I'm no small girl. I'm a 5'9" farm girl and very strong, but he is easily 6'2" if not taller and bigger than me. Not overly muscular, but I'm sure he would have no issue pinning me down or hurting me if he wanted to. I had never seen him like this. I had seen him mad, but never to this degree, and certainly never mad at me. Why wouldn't you have told me that you had a boyfriend? We spend all this time together and you joke and flirt with me all the time, but you have a boyfriend. You have been leading me on all this time. How long have you had a boyfriend? How could you have hid that from me? There's no way you have a boyfriend. You must be lying to me. How could you treat me like this? How can you sit there and let me say all those things and spill my heart to you without stopping me? On and on this went for what felt like an hour, but it was only a couple minutes. Eventually he calms down a bit. I see it hits him what he's doing once I started crying because he literally has me cornered in this back room with him, and the only other person in the building is up front on the registers. Too far away to hear anything going on, and I have no idea what to do. All I managed to say is that I'm sorry if he interpreted my joking as flirting. It was never my intention, and I didn't bring up that I had a boyfriend because I never had occasion to. It's not something I would just throw into the middle of an unrelated conversation. He goes on to call me a heartless BCH and tells me to leave the receiving area and leave him alone, which I do. This has been nagging on me occasionally throughout the last 8ish years since this happened, mostly since after this event. Kyle ended up on a really bad spiral. I quit shortly after this event for unrelated reasons, and he quit his job about 2 years later. I had seen him occasionally in the store while he was working there, and he was a totally different person. Not just to me, but to everyone. I feel guilty sometimes, wondering if I affected his mental health and helped launch him into his mess. Wondering if I was the straw that broke the camel's back. Wondering if I happened to mention that I had a boyfriend to him at some point beforehand. If everything could have turned out differently, and maybe he would be okay. It has taken some time, learning to come to terms with what happened and realize that I can't change anything now. Ideally I should have had a conversation with him after he gave me the note and let him know I wasn't interested and had no intentions of pursuing a relationship with him more than just friendship. That doesn't mean that the end result would have changed necessarily, but I will never know, and it's the not knowing that I wonder about from time to time. I just wanted to share my story here in case someone is going through something similar. Please learn from my situation and have that difficult conversation. Yes, it can be uncomfortable, but if it can help you potentially avoid a scary situation later down the line, it's 100% worth it. You can't know what someone else is thinking, and you can't ever be sure you both have the same understanding of the situation without a conversation about it. I was extremely fortunate that this didn't take a violent turn, but I know there are many people out in the world that were not as fortunate. Please keep yourselves safe.